Hello everyone, this is Paul, the Oka Knight, getting back in the saddle to bring an unboxing of the Deluxe 5th edition of John Edwards' classic, The Russian Campaign, just published by GMT Games, the new version developed by Tom Gregorio. Those of you who have followed the channel no doubt are noticing something new here. Yep, the game table is nearing completion, and like the Death Star in the second Star Wars movie, I now have a fully armed and operational battle station. The only significant component of the base table that is missing is the armrest that will run around its perimeter, coming soon to a construction video near you. But for today, let's dig into the new edition of the Russian Campaign and see what we have. For those of you who were not around 50 years ago, the Russian Campaign is a classic hex and counter war game where you recreate the entirety of the German invasion of the Soviet Union beginning June 22nd, 1941, and carrying on to the end of the war. Even better, the game is eminently playable such that you can actually finish it in your lifetime. While originally published in Australia, I first heard of this game when it was picked up by the good old Avalon Hill Game Company and became an instant hit. I have no idea how many gamers cut their wargaming teeth on this one, but the designer's notes mentioned that there were about 250,000 copies sold in the 1970s alone. What? A hex and counter wargame selling 250,000 copies? Not your father's P500, let me tell you. The game box. The 5th edition retains the Roger McGowan cover art seen on the Avalon Hill edition. A wise choice as it is a classic presentation and is instantly recognizable. Unlike its predecessor, the box is printed in a standard 2-inch bookshelf format instead of the larger, shallower flat box used by Avalon Hill back in the day. The box reverse has all the usual marketing garb, providing a very brief overview of the game, along with enough artwork samples to show that superficially, not a lot has changed in 50 years. GMT pegs the game's complexity at 5 on their 9-point scale, which suggests to me that the 5th edition has been beefed up a tad, with the solitaire rating listed as an 8. Since I read the rules prior to doing unboxing videos, I can say that yep, there's nothing here that solitaire players will have a problem with. Most excellent. Both ratings are appropriate. GMT has also added a 3rd rating on replay value that I haven't seen before, positioning the Russian Campaign at an 8 of 9 for replayability, which I also agree with. Game components. When you open the box, you will see that all the components have been updated to modern standards. The counters retain the simple, straightforward presentation of the original, right down to the color palette. They have also been enlarged to a robust 5/8 of an inch, which will no doubt make moving the counters a more pleasant experience. Both unit scale, corps and armies, and stacking is unchanged from the Avalon Hill version, with up to 3 corps, generally German, or 2 armies, generally Soviet, allowed in a hex. 2 versions of armor and mechanized units are included, one with tank silhouettes and the other with NATO symbology. The 2 versions are functionally identical, so it's simply the player's choice which to use in the game they play. The new map is beautifully done, with 2 map panels covering roughly 42 by 34 inches of real estate. It is much larger than the original and will easily handle the larger counters. Being an old Avalon Hill guy, I opted for the hard-mounted map add-on, but the paper map that comes standard is really nice, with an eggshell low-gloss finish and printed on very sturdy, almost cardstock paper. Like most GMT hard-mounted maps, you have to train it to lay flat, which usually takes one night with some game boxes stacked on it. As a bonus, much of the box is taken up by a cardboard insert, so there is even a fighting chance of storing the hard-mounted map in the box. A very good thing for those of us who are shelf space challenged. The game also includes orders of battle for the scenarios as well as the full campaign, all nicely large and easy to read, as well as multiple copies of the terrain charts, CRT, and other charts used in the game. All in all, not too much more could have been done to make the package better. Maybe individually mount the 520 counters in their sprues, such as in games published by Hexasim, but for me and my Oregon Laminations corner clipper, we can handle this job pretty easily. The rules. The single 34-page rulebook contains everything the designer has to say about the game. The mainline rules take up about 20 pages and also includes a complete set of the most commonly used rules. Note that as a 5th edition, rules are included from all prior editions, plus some additional clarifications and small changes. It is recognizably similar, but not exactly the same as my old 2nd edition copy, but by and large, the designer has avoided the trap of rules bloat that I have seen other modernization editions fall into. Put Compass's remake of Victory Games' NATO at the head of this list. But much of the game is very close to what I remember, and what has changed is likely for the better. The Russian campaign was the first operational level game I played to move beyond the pure I go, you go mechanic. It debuted the so-called double impulse system, where each side gets to move and have combat, and within constraints imposed by weather and unit type, gets to move and fight a second time. Panzers are indeed to be feared in 1941, as they can blast holes in the ill-prepared Soviet lines, and then exploit, surround, and drive deep into Mother Russia in their second impulse. Given that turns represent 2 calendar months, the mechanic and the timescale work together seamlessly. But bring on the mud and the snow turns, and panzers lose many of the advantages they had in good weather, and for the first 2 winters, all German units are hampered with the need to maintain combat supply. German units not in or adjacent to a city in the winter of 41-42 and not within 2 of the same in winter of 42-43 are halved in combat value. War is hell, and then you are a German fighting the Russian winter in your best summer uniform. And speaking of the weather, the biggest gripe I had about the Avalon Hill version was that spring and fall weather turns required a single D6 roll that set the weather for the next 2-month turn. A couple of die rolls early in the game could turn the game into a German cakewalk or a huge uphill battle. While using so-called averaging dice could help, the current version introduces a die roll modifier mechanic that preserves variability but makes up for extreme results by tracking a die roll modifier to swing the weather the other way the next time the die is rolled. Get great weather this turn, you will likely pay for it next turn, and vice versa. Combat is a simple odds-based calculation, but it is a creature of the 1970s in some ways. Most units project a zone of control in surrounding hexes, normal stuff, but combat between adjacent units is mandatory. Yes, Brunhilde, we are in the land of so-called soak-off attacks, where players are forced to make low-odds attacks on some units to deliver a smashing attack on others. The first war game I ever had, Blitzkrieg, worked this way, and the Russian campaign is pretty much the same in this regard. But unlike older games, the CRT has a contact result where nothing happens with an attack, forcing their opponent to either counterattack or retreat in their turn. Casualties are taken by eliminating units, so there is no step reduction happening here. While there is a possibility of forcing units to surrender, thereby eliminating them from their country's national force pool, most lost units go into their country's pool of available replacement units. The Soviets receive replacement points each turn based on the number of surviving workers stationed in cities scattered across the map. Each turn, they pump out new replacement points used to build units from the dead pile. Losing worker units is a good way for the Soviets to lose the war, so there is great incentive not to lose cities containing them. German replacements only come in the first good weather turn once each year, according to a fixed schedule. For example, they get exactly 1 Wehrmacht Panzer Corps, 1 mechanized unit, and so forth each spring. If more Panzer Corps have been lost, how sad for you. You get to wait another year and don't lose any more of them, or you may never get back to full strength. So the Germans are usually trying to minimize losses, while the Soviets are far more accepting of them, at least up to reasonable limits. Because the game has been around so long and has been played so many times, it also includes about 4 pages of optional rules that have been used throughout the years. Examples include using historical weather, relocating Soviet factories, and other changes that have been used by various players over time. The developer is upfront in saying that the optional rules may change play balance, but as long as players understand this, I see no issues here. The rulebook continues by offering various scenarios that may be used to play major segments of the campaign, and I fully expect they will be used in both tournament settings at conventions and between friends simply wanting a shorter game. While there is no extended example of play offered, the rules include many detailed examples and were sufficient to answer most questions I had working through them. Finally, they are printed in a reasonable font and avoid my usual gripe by including both a table of contents and a detailed index. Most excellent! All in all, if you are one of the 250,000 customers who bought your copy back in the day, you will feel right at home with this new version. I can't wait to punch counters and get this one going. Okay, my friends, this is about all I can say in a simple unboxing video. I may break in the new table with a gameplay video on this one. You guys vote with your views and your subs, so I will see what you have to say. 2022 may have been the very best year historical gaming has ever seen, so I have quite a backlog and many other options to choose from. And in that vein, if you have enjoyed this video and have not yet subscribed to the channel, please join our community of gamers by hitting the subscription button and give a thumbs up. And if you like, go ahead and leave a comment. I read them all and respond to most. But that's it for now. So this is Paul the Oka Knight getting back to doing game reviews and wishing you all a pleasant evening. Bye for now.